Hi there, Mandy Friedman here, licensed professional clinical counselor, clinically certified domestic violence counselor, clinically certified trauma professional level 2, the creator of SNAP survivors of narcissistic and abusive personalities. I'm here with Sarah Morehart, who's a therapist at Claremont Mental Health, and we're going to talk about something very near and dear to our hearts, which is Taylor Swift lyrics. We're going to talk about how some of those lyrics relate to the topic of relational trauma. But first, Sarah, can you introduce yourself and tell us, who are you and how did you become a Swiftie?
Thanks, Mandy. I'm Sarah. I'm a licensed professional counselor and certified trauma professional. I have been a Swiftie since I first heard Teardrops on My Guitar on the radio as a kid. So it's been a long time for me. She's basically been my older sister. And personally, I find it really difficult to not reference her lyrics all the time to my clients.
I'm there too, and I'll admit that I do reference her lyrics sometimes. I'll be like, have you heard that Taylor Swift song, such and such? Like, if you haven't, just, give it a shot. Because there's a lot of what you're saying. It's coming up for me. Like, it's on my brain. I became a Swiftie a couple summers ago when she came through Cincinnati for the Eras tour. I have to admit and be just transparent that prior to this, she was someone that I couldn't remember her name. Can you believe that? You know what I mean? Like someone you can picture in your mind, but you just can't, the name just doesn't stick. I know. I had nothing against her. I just didn't know. My son works at a cat shelter. He volunteers once a week, and lots of young women work at the cat shelter. I know now that Taylor Swift is a cat person. So this cat shelter was exploding with what these women did to decorate. They named all the cats after different Taylor Swift songs. It was impressive. And I thought, what's going on? You saw a lot of people really getting excited for the concert, and Cincinnati was just like a buzz when she was here. And I just was curious, like, what is this all about? And what are these young women especially so excited about? That same summer, my husband was out of town the whole summer to take care of his mom. And so I was alone and working in the garden by myself a lot as a way of trying to keep myself not being sad. And I just started listening. And ever since then, I've had Taylor Swift on the brain. And when The Fate of Ophelia and The Life of a Showgirl came out, I was listening to it over and over again. And that's how it's been with, most of her songs. It's on repeat, and I go to bed with it playing in my head, and I wake up with it playing in my head. My son likes it now, and that's what he prefers to listen to. Thank goodness. He's got this friendship bracelets he wears. So I'm brand new as a Swiftie, Sarah. So to hear that you first started when you were a little girl means that you're the expert in the room in terms of what it means to be a Swiftie, and you have a lot more history with this content. So I'm going to be leaning on you while we create these videos. Now, there was a couple of things we needed to mention. One is sort of a disclaimer. Sarah, can you tell our audience those things that we need to tell them about what we're doing here, what we're not doing here?
Yeah, I think the first thing that you and I had said we wanted to make sure we mentioned was, what do we mean when we say relational trauma? In today's video, we're going to be identifying songs and lyrics of Taylor Swift's that we feel refer to relational trauma. Relational trauma refers to traumatic experiences that occur within the context of relationships. And an important disclaimer to make is relational trauma is an experience. And PTSD, the diagnosis of PTSD, can sometimes, but not always, result from relational trauma. So just to be clear, we're not doing any diagnosing in this video. We're just commenting on lyrics that point to what we believe is the experience of relational trauma. And an additional disclaimer is we're not making any commentary on Taylor Swift's personal life in this video. A lot of her songs are fictional. A lot of her songs are autobiographical here, and we're not here to diagnose anyone from afar.
Relational trauma, like you said, is an experience. So we could even maybe say traumatic, because traumatic is sort of like a descriptive term but is not necessarily the same thing as having PTSD. You know, we can be through something traumatic without it necessarily ending with PTSD, like you said. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But for the sake of this video, we're talking about things that are relationally traumatic. And what kinds of relationships can be traumatic, Sarah?
Any relationships. So that's familial relationships, parental relationships, friendships, romantic relationships. Am I missing any?
You can have a relationship at like work, like your boss, you know, someone who has authority or power over you. That can be relational as well, where you have to have a relationship of some sort with someone that has authority or power, and that feeling of not being able to do anything about what's going on when someone has that kind of, there's a power imbalance there. So yeah, really any relationship where someone is emotionally involved and harm happens or damage happens. Toxic dynamics play out and people get hurt. Some people have more of a history of that than others, therefore can be more susceptible to the effects of things that are relationally traumatic.
Yes, and there's patterns to it. The more relational trauma you experience in your life, the more those experiences will impact your future relationships. And that's something that I was tracking and noticing because I'm really familiar with Taylor Swift's entire discography. That's something I was sort of looking at is how are these themes continuing to come up?
So we made a list. You came up with your top 5 songs. I came up with my top 5 songs that to us remind us of relational trauma. We're going to just ping pong back and forth with our thoughts about those 5. So let's get started. We're doing our top 5 Taylor Swift songs that the lyrics are reminiscent of relational trauma. Okay, Sarah, you go first. What is number 5?
Okay, so my number 5 is The Fate of Ophelia. And I was really shocked that this ended up on my list. When I was narrowing down the Taylor Swift songs I would want to talk about, I didn't think any song from The Life of a Showgirl would end up on my list because it's such a happy, triumphant album. But when I kept listening to The Fate of Ophelia, I felt there was a sinister undertone to it. And this might be a little bit of a hot take, a little bit of a controversial take. I feel that the lyrics in The Fate of Ophelia, first of all, they reference a prior relational trauma that happened before the narrator of the song meets the subject of the song that she's now in love with. It starts on that morose tone of melancholy. She says in the beginning of the song, "If you'd never come for me, I might have drowned in melancholy." She's really, really low, the narrator. I believe this song in general illustrates a rose-colored glasses effect that can happen with individuals who go through relational trauma. Rose-colored glasses is really a way of idealizing your next relationship following the relational trauma, and it can be a way of avoiding the pain of having to really view and process the pain that you went through before. So you'll commonly see this pattern where then the next relationship, whether it's a healthy relationship or not, it could be a healthy relationship or it could be a not healthy relationship, you view them as a savior. And there's a lot of lyrics here that feels like the subject that's being desired in the song is being viewed as a savior. There's a lyric, "You lit my sky up." That's very exaggerated of, wow, you made my whole world like wonderful and perfect. In the chorus, there's, "I sat alone in my tower, you were just honing your powers," as if the subject of the song is like a superhero. There's, "You dug me out of my grave and saved my heart from the fate of Ophelia," as if the subject of the song is the one who did that, and the narrator is not responsible at all for any of that recovery. So in any way, I'm not trying to comment on the health or not health of the relationship depicted in the song. I'm commenting on these patterns of language that are happening. And even the line, "No longer drowning and deceived, all because you came for me," like as if the only reason the narrator has recovered from this trauma is that the next relationship happened. And there can be an almost dependency on, I'm not okay if I'm not in the the next relationship that can happen. So this song kept haunting me with those kinds of word choices. Mandy, do you have anything you wanted to say about this song?
I couldn't agree more, and like you said, we're not talking about specific people. We're talking about how this applies to the patterns. And the patterns that we see are that somebody will wind up going right into another relationship after a bad relationship. And as a therapist, what I'll hear in a session is, he's nothing like my ex, or she's nothing like my ex, or they're nothing like my ex. It's nothing like the last relationship. This is also moving really fast because it's just so much better. It's so different. But you're right. There's this quality that some survivors of toxic and abusive relationships, that they're wanting to have this ideal experience of love. Super empathic people have this innate idea of what love is supposed to be, and yet the relationships don't actually play out that way. And then we're living in a state of cognitive dissonance, as these ideals of what relationships should be isn't happening. And then someone new comes along and they're so much better, and we're putting them on a pedestal.
I think that putting them on a pedestal helps with not having to face or fully look at what had happened before. It's a way of avoiding pain, because the relational trauma you experienced before this relationship was so painful, and you're so afraid of experiencing that again, that you almost mentally have to only look at the good and view the perfection, so that you don't have to go back to that really painful place.
It's trying to achieve that ideal without really processing or facing the pain of what we've just been through, and not wanting to face the realities that, how can we do things differently this time?
Mandy, what's your number 5?
So my number 5 is hoax. And the reason I picked this is because of the word hoax, and that we're using that as a way to describe that the relationship is not authentic, that this person that we are trying to make this work with is misrepresenting who they are, is misrepresenting their intentions, and you're choosing to believe something that isn't true simply because you want so badly for it to be true. For example, the narrator uses the phrase, your sleight of hand. And that indicates that there's trickery involved, that someone is pulling the wool over your eyes. But yet at the same time, we are saying that no other sadness in the world would do. So it's almost as if this love, even though it's hurting me, even though I know it's not real, I want it so bad that I'll just continue to believe. The narrator refers to the love as being faithless. So what is love without faith? Addiction, attachment, status. It's something we just do for the sake of trying to self-soothe. I mean, if we don't have actual faith in the relationship, if we don't have actual faith in the person, but we're trying to force the relationship, it makes it something that isn't real, that we're just pretending exists, but the evidence shows otherwise. The narrator also talks about a past relationship that they're still healing from. You knew I was hurting, you knew what I have been through, and yet you're putting me through it again. When they say, you knew it still hurts underneath my scars from when they pulled me apart. When I was having these difficulties, an additional relational trauma that I was facing, something that was pulling me apart. You were there, you saw that, you knew that I've been through this, and look at, you're doing it to me now. You're inflicting upon me the thing that you saw me go through. And none of this is even real anyway. And then compares this to that and says, but what you did was just as dark. So you know what I went through with these people. The fact that you knew that and you did this anyway makes it just as dark. And I might even say even darker. When somebody knows what your soft spots are, when somebody knows your wounds, someone who loves you should help you protect those things and to be cautious of them and not stomp all over them. If someone really truly knows you, loves you, and you're being heard and you're being known, you would expect that knowledge of your history would somehow be playing out in the relational patterns, right? But instead, you're just doing the same thing to me that somebody else did before, and with knowing that that's what had happened. That's the way I interpret the lyrics from the song Hoax. But Sarah, what's your take on this song?
I love everything you said, Mandy. This song has always been a puzzle for me. I've always gotten the sense that it's firmly planted in the experience of being in the dynamic, in that relationship. That line, don't not want no other shade of blue but you, or no other sadness in the world would do, really brings me back to the idea of codependency. At the end of the day, I'm always going to choose you. Almost stood on the cliffside screaming, give me a reason, is like, I view it as the narrator saying, all I need you to give me is one little shred of a reason to stay with you, and I'm hooked. I'm staying, because that's my go-to. In codependency, I choose you no matter what, even though there's these really harsh lines about, as you said, being pulled apart and what you did was just as dark. Even at the end, I think she says, you have beaten my heart. My heart has been beaten, but I am looking for every and any shred of a reason to stay. So that's been my impression of the song, but it's always been really confusing. The lyrics to it are very complex.
I agree. And I think it also reflects something that I see with clients, and that is that the narrator has a level of self-awareness here and recognizes their own patterns, and yet still engages in them. And that's something that's very realistic, that somebody can see, like, okay, I know this is what I do, this is my thing, but I haven't figured out how to change it yet. I haven't figured out how to break the pattern. I just know that I do this, and I know that I don't like it. Okay, that was number 5. Next, we're going to talk about Sarah's number 4 and my number 4. Thank you for watching, for listening.
Thank you.